Hi everybody, Doug Miles along with Don Henderson. We're here today at Ed Smith Stadium. This is opening day of the Grapefruit League season here in Sarasota. The Baltimore Orioles training camp taking on the Minnesota Twins today. And Don, even though it's not the regular season opening day, always a special feeling for spring training opening day.
Well, great to have baseball, first of all, back in Sarasota. Spring training, everybody looks forward to it. And of course, the Orioles have a lot to prove. After a devastating year last year, Buck, of course, no longer the manager, which is a major change after, 8 or 9 years. And so they've got a lot to prove, and a lot of their younger players, as well as their veteran players, did not play very well last year, and they've got to step up.
Yeah, Brandon Hyde, as we mentioned in our last report, the new manager coming over from the Cubs organization, working under Joe Madden, and Mike Elias from the Astros organization. He was an assistant to the GM there, and now he's the new GM here in Baltimore. So Orioles fans hoping some of that Astros magic rubs off.
Well, they lost at the end of the season last year, Machado, and we talked about it a little bit last week as we did our preview show. Machado going to the Dodgers, then the Dodgers really did not show any interest at all in re-signing him, and I thought a little bit of a surprise that he got the $300 million that they talked about, and especially from where he got it, San Diego.
Right.
I mean, that to me was a marvel that San Diego at this point, when they're competing in the Western Division, would put $300 million into one player. I would think you spread it around a little bit, get some more pitching, get some more talented players, but they decided to go to the big route and convince the fans that they're trying to win, so they signed him for $300 million.
Yeah, Padres never really been known as a franchise to spend a lot of money.
Exactly.
I mean, in their whole history.
Well, really, if you look back to Dave Winfield, we talked about this on another show during the week this week. Dave Winfield, they had a championship team there, or at least going to the World Series. But after that, they did one major rebuilding just like this with big money, but it all fell through, and they never really, when Bud Black was managing, never really were fortunate enough to be a real contender. So now they're trying it again. I'm just not personally a believer in spending $300 million on one player.
And Bryce Harper's still out there looking to hopefully sign on with some team. The Phillies seem to be the front runner, although that may not come true. But the Machado situation, we saw him here the last several years in spring training, but he did not help himself with some of those comments he made after the World Series, not hustling and saying that's not me, and showed that to be true in some of the World Series games. So that hurt him, I think, taking this long to get signed.
Well, they sort of held out. All the owners held out. Harper's still not signed. You and I talked about it at breakfast this morning. Again, you're looking at Boras, of course, the premier agent of all time. He's looking for over $300 million. Washington had offered him $300 million before the end of last year, August, September, and he turned it down. Also, a lot of speculation that he had turned down conversations with the Phillies, and he said he did not want to come to Philadelphia. But I think your point is well taken. He's running out of teams. I think the Phillies desperately need to make a move. They were the ones that talked about spending big money in the offseason, really making their team a contender. And then they didn't do it. They turned down Machado. They said they didn't want to go that high with Machado. So the pressure is really, I think, on the Phillies to sign. Whether they'll go for $330 million, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see what happens as games, as we say, start today. This is Saturday, the 23rd of February, and a bit earlier start to the games. Even in spring training, they want to get the regular season started earlier this year, so that's why we're starting about a week early.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and I chatted too about the fact they've now split up opening day. They're going to open up in Tokyo on the 20th of March. They gave them the opportunity to start an exhibition game, which got rained out yesterday, and so they're starting games a little bit earlier around the West Coast, Arizona, because they are going to Tokyo. But it really spreads opening day out. Opening day used to be a real big day, and now it's spread out into different segments.
Back to the Orioles here. Of course, they'll be honoring today and throughout spring training, the regular season, putting a patch on their uniform of Frank Robinson's number. He passed away a few weeks ago. Great Oriole player for their World Series win in 1970. So they're going to be honoring Frank today and during the regular season.
I was there in 1970 when they won it, and at the same time, people in Cincinnati thought that Frank was through and made what turned out to be one of the worst trades in baseball history, because he went to the Orioles and became a second-time MVP. He's the only player that's ever had MVP credentials in both the National and the American League. And of course, he was one of the first black managers in baseball. He broke a lot of barriers. Was a great player. Then he went into administrative with the league.
Right.
He covered almost every segment of baseball. And a sad note when he passed away this week.
Almost, as we were talking about before, almost underrated, even though he put up such great numbers. I think it was number 4 or 5 in all-time home runs when he retired. But people don't necessarily think of him as a great home run hitter, but he was.
Yeah, when you look at the numbers, and of course everybody now focuses on what happened with the Giants and what happened with the number. You know, everybody talked about 714 and Babe Ruth for all those years, and then those numbers sort of got really confused as we went along. And Robinson, instead of being, I don't remember exactly, 4th or 5th all time, he then dropped down the ledger. But as you said, you hit too many home runs. You're an MVP in both leagues. You're an MVP in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you certainly made your mark on baseball.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Beautiful day here, about 80 degrees, I guess, Don. Nice breeze out there. So Ernie Banks would say, let's play 2. We'll just play 1 today against the Twins, but we'll have a good time.
Well, I just like to see the Orioles improve a little bit. Davis, as I said, he did a major interview with one of the local papers here, Doug Fernandez, and talked about his 167 batting average of last year. And when you get that kind of money, I think it was a 5-year deal for 20, and you get that kind of money, as he said in the interview, you got to expect criticism, and he got a lot of it.
Yeah, handling it pretty well, though.
Yes, very well.
Give him credit for that after a really horrible season by his own admission. We'll see how that goes. I know you'll get a chance. The Rays come in, Tampa Bay Rays come in Tuesday here, so we'll get a chance to see them. We'll do a report on that next week.
Yeah, we'll see the Rays, and tomorrow Toronto is in, which is always nice. They came over from Dunedin. They're in a year of transition too, so it'll be interesting to see as the year goes along how they turn out. So let's get it up. Let's get started.
And if the Phillies do sign Harper, we'll see the Phillies sometime this spring. We'll get
a couple of times. Yeah, Yankees here a couple of times, Phillies here a couple of times, and so we'll get a chance to be right on the sidelines for almost everything that happens.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next time.